Bharat Ram, just make sure nobody stands in the way of the camera. Just have them come in. Ramesh, you'll have to come in. You're blocking the camera. Sit, Ramesh. Come inside, everybody come inside. Just invite everybody to come inside and sit. ध्याता मंत्रधरैर्वृता सृजति या बुद्धिं प्रकृत्या शिवाम् आरम्भैः स्थिरचिन्तनैर्मतिमतां सिद्धिप्रवाहो यतः दृश्ये भ्राम्यति देशकालविवृते विश्वस्थितिर्वायया सा शक्तिर्निखिलाण्डकोटिसवितुर्व्याख्यातुनस्तत्पदम् आधानाद्वितितप्रभावविसरो विश्वस्य यो मूर्तिमान् कालं यस्य जगद्विसृष्टिकरणं कार्यार्थरूपं विदु माने हेतुरयं च भेदनिलयो देशो यदालम्बना तस्मै ध्वस्ततमो घनाय महसां ताताय तुभ्यं नमः सत्यासत्यविवेचकः स भगवान् धर्मो विधानध्रुव कल्याणार्थकरो हरेर्जनिमताम् अन्तर्विमानोद्यमी प्राणत्राणपरायणस्थितिमतां रुद्रोऽपि कामार्तिहा धर्मार्थे क्षणकारणस्य जगत शास्तस्तवैतें शव रूपं ते वियदुत्तमं कृतिमती शक्तिः परा तापसी जातं सर्वमजण्डकं तु युवयोर् अन्योन्यतादीपकम् शान्तिः सर्वसमापि भूतकरुणा न त्वां विहातुं क्षमा सार्वात्म्यं भजतस्तवेश महिमा सीमानमुल्लङ्घते श्लिष्यन्ति गहनाम्बरं रहसि ते शक्तिशरीरं विभो प्रेम प्रश्वसितेन वां वितनुते सर्वत्र गूढां श्रियम् सत्यासत्यविवेचकः स भगवान् धर्मो सान्द्रानन्दकृता यथा वपुशिवां घर्माम्भसंमालिका वैरिञ्चाण्डपरम्परायतयं ताराकृतिर्नृत्यति अखण्डं प्रज्ञानं जगदुदयभङ्गस्थितिगुणं गुणातीता शक्तिस्तव सहचरी विश्वजननी अनन्तशेषात्मा भवसि च जगद्भारभरितो नदन्नन्तर्भूतेष्वणुरसि महान् सोऽसि भगवन् अविश्लेष्यं त्वत्तः सुचिरमभजं नाथ जगताम् अजानन्नर्धं ते भुवनजननीं प्राणदयिताम् तथाप्यस्येदं मे चरितमपराधं न गणयस् अहो आमन्योन्य प्रथनपटु दाम्पत्य महिमा तस्मादेनं तव पदजुषं त्वत्कटाक्षोपजीव्यम् नाथ श्रीमन् कुशलकरणं साधु संधाय जीया साते सक्ता मयि तव जने बिभ्रति कार्यभारम् दृष्टेर्जीयात् भुवन जयिनी सर्वसाम्राज्य लक्ष्मी A very happy birthday to all of Panditji's family. We are meeting here under exceptional circumstances, unlike on every year. As you can see, the entire house is undergoing a massive renovation. It is after the house itself is about 250 years old as far as we know. And many of the beams had acquired termites and other rotting and other problems. And it was time that some renovation had to be done. And we are very fortunate that this process has begun. And the next year when you come, it will have been completed for sure. The house itself is exceptional for many reasons. It was originally owned by Zeer Naidu, who was the person who stood, if I remember right, he stood guarantee for Sri Aurobindo when Sri Aurobindo wanted to come to Pondicherry, and was the first to greet him, offering a garland around him when he landed in Pondicherry. A very devoted citizen of Pondicherry in a sense. He was a landlord. But many of the properties that he owned, he then rented to the ashram, and eventually many of these were acquired. And so this house has a long history going back to when Sri Aurobindo first came to Pondicherry. And then the mother has obviously come here many times. And from the point where the ashram was established, the space was rented by Sri Aurobindo from Zeer Naidu. And it is here that many of the very early sadhakas lived. Among them, Kapali Shastriyar and Acharya Abhaydev and various others, all of whom are very significant, both from their spiritual attainment as well as the transmission of the teaching that they were able to express and share with others. Acharya Abhaydev, as you know, was the only disciple of Sri Aurobindo who was also a guru to his own disciples. And Sri Aurobindo made a special exception to him, that he could live in the ashram for 6 months and then go back for 6 months to look after his disciples in the north. And we are told that the mother had promised them that if she ever moved out of Pondicherry on a visit, she would first visit them in their ashram. Of course, that did not happen. But this is just a background of the way this space has been exalted by the presence of all these. Kapali Shastriyar himself, as you know, lived in this room just behind. And there were several sadhakas. And Panditji, when he first came to the ashram, it was one of those questions which he was given, which is like a test to any disciple. He was asked, would you like to stay with Kapali or with his family members? His mother and his sister were living in a building 2 blocks away. And immediately he said, no, with Kapali, obviously. And that was one of those tests, whether he had come for the sadhana or for the family. And it's a test all of us have to be conscious of. Why are we here really? And if we are here for the sadhana, what is it that we are willing to commit to, and to what extent is our commitment? So Panditji's room, as you know, is behind, next to Kapali Shastriyar's. And this entire space, we are renovating in a way that the commitment we have, that it should last another 250 years. So that all those who come afterwards may also benefit from the space of sadhana in the way that we have all benefited, and from the presence that has been established here. For those of you who would like to participate in this renovation, you are welcome to contribute to Dipti Trust for this purpose. And for those who are watching online, I will place the details of the account for transfer for those who would like to share in it. The theme which I wanted to share with you for today, as we have done every year, on some aspect of Panditji's life or his personality, which has been for us such a great inspiration. The theme I wanted to share today is about a certain capacity which is exceptionally rare even among sadhakas. When Panditji went to the mother, in the diary notes that he shared with us of those interactions, there is one particular incident that is striking, that points us in this direction, where, I am paraphrasing, the mother asked him what he would like for his birthday, and he said he would like to have her love. And she said, that you have. And he said, but to be able to share with others. And he notes how the mother concentrated for a long time in order to infuse in him the capacity. It's a hint of the direction in which his development took place, which is then we have all observed who had contact with him directly, or we see also from some of the notes in his diaries, that to receive the divine presence, and in this case the divine love, one has to be an exceptional instrument already, because to be able to receive that itself demands a certain preparation. But further to that, to be able to contain what is received in its fullness requires a still greater development, because it needs a consciousness that is wide enough to hold the divine love, which is of the nature of infinity. To be able to contain it, the bowl itself should be vast enough to hold an ocean. And we find in his diary notes this incident, he recalls, as he was coming down from the mother, having met her, full of that afflatus of what he had received, carrying it with him. I believe it was one of the colleagues, perhaps it was Keshavamurthy, who commented, they felt as if an ocean was advancing. And Panditji noted that because it is so significant, the container itself must become as large as the ocean to be able to hold the ocean. And this we see in him in this example. But that is not enough to receive, to contain. Eventually that must manifest in every detail, in every part of our being, in every activity of our life, down to the tiniest details. Otherwise it is not an integral yoga. It must transform our nature. It must transform our life itself and divinize the life. And the extent to which Panditji was able to take this, again we have all felt, seen, heard, experienced in whatever way. But in his diary notes is another incident where, or was it shared by others from his sister, where having come from the mother with that intense afflatus of the divine love, pouring, sharing, the container itself struggles sometimes to maintain it, and yet the effort in detail. And he notes, or we hear how even wiping the fridge was a state of continuous immersion in that presence, pouring the divine love onto the fridge, a physical, material, inanimate machine, we might say. And yet to that also the divine love pours with the same intensity and fullness as to a human being and to each one of us. But there is still a fourth factor which is distinctive and perhaps the most exceptional and the most rare. Having received, having contained, having integrated in life, the fourth is the power to transmit to another. And by this we find the outstanding feature of Panditji's example, that not only could he hold in this way, but he could transmit this to others, not just in the immediate passage after the afflatus having come from the mother's room where it is radiating naturally, but many years after the mother has left her body, and he would invoke, hold, contain, and then transmit to those who were near. We remember on the occasion of his birthdays especially, it was as if one felt in the atmosphere this tremendous dynamism of that power and love pouring out. There were a few exceptional cases where the transmission took a form which I had personally occasion to experience only a couple of times, but I heard from others also that they had, when the intensity would be so great or the afflatus would be so spontaneously so great that moved as he was in that moment, not only was there a transmission in the general space, but a special focus, a special transmission given. It is recorded by Suhas Tillu, one of the disciples you might remember, who wrote a little book of his relationship and experiences with Panditji, where Panditji put his foot and with his toe touched him, and there was a massive transmission physically of the experience that he was carrying. I had occasion to have that a few times. The memory of it and the intensity of it is still fresh for its intensity. Some of you perhaps might have felt, with or without the physical touch, the same transmission. And this is one of those very rare, exceptional things which we do not find among disciples easily, in any tradition for that matter. And it was because of that so many thousands receiving that touch, depending on their capacity to receive, to contain, but to each he was able to give and transmit as necessary in that moment. And it is because of this that so many thousands experienced a change in their life from that brief contact with him, because it was a transmission of the full power of the mother's consciousness and the mother's love, the divine love transmitted through a transparent and full instrument. So it is to this power of transmission that I am highlighting as something exceptional that we got to experience. But the purpose of this is to hold it as an inspiration that all of us must grow eventually to become focal points for the mother's love and for the mother's consciousness, knowledge, power, beauty, harmony, and love, or whatever aspect that we are able most easily to receive, to become vehicles to incarnate and to manifest that. Sri Aurobindo uses a particular phrase that we have to become dynamos of the divine presence. It's a very suggestive phrase. A dynamo, and even the etymology of the word dynamo is dynamism. The root is still this movement of activity, powerful, forceful, intense. And a dynamo is a small device that by simple rotation is able to generate an electricity. And the electricity can reach out to any distance. Suggestive of the role that our vehicle, this container of the human being that we are, has to play as a dynamo. The power that flows through radiating. And Sri Aurobindo describes radiating out as from a dynamo, like an electricity, inspiring and touching others. Thousands perhaps, or whoever comes in contact. But this is the example we see in Panditji's life and it is an example that all of us have to grow towards, because that should be the culmination of the journey in the integral yoga. It is not enough that we experience something of the presence. It is not enough that we contain. It is not enough that we integrate to divinize and transform our nature. We have to also become radiators of that presence. And such is the direction that we may all aspire towards in our own journey. The extent to which this can be done, we have glimpsed, and of this, perhaps, in recalling what is possible, we may feel inspired to also work towards it consciously. So this is the theme that I wanted to share for today. After, in a few moments, we will have a brief concentration in silence, ending with a chant of Om together 3 times. And after that, I would invite all of you to partake of the prasad, which has been kept here. As usual, we have a message of one of Panditji's writings, which you will find inspiring, and some prasad which has been kept here. Later in the morning at 9:30, we will go to the ashram, to the meditation hall, and sit there for 15 minutes under Sri Aurobindo's room in concentration. For those who would like to join us, you can wait near the Samadhi and at 9:25 come inside, so that there is no disturbance for the arrangement of the organization in the ashram. And we will meet in the meditation hall for the concentration. For the rest of the day, the space will be open. If anybody would like to come and sit here, you are welcome. Unfortunately, it is not very comfortable because of the lack of facilities, the house being under renovation. Nevertheless, for the presence, it does not matter. And so it is for the presence that we come, and we can receive it in whatever material circumstances might be. Hopefully, the house itself will become more and more expressive of the quality of the presence when it is completed, in whatever time it takes. So this is a brief meditation and a remembrance and a sharing of the contact with Panditji. Once again, a very happy birthday to all of you, to all of Panditji's family. We'll sit in concentration, in silence, for about 5 minutes, and then conclude with the collective chant of Om 3 times. This is for the slideshow of Panditji's photos, which will go on through most of the day.